judge a man not by his vices, no, but see him by his virtues. Find a penny by the roadside, yeah. Remember someone loves you, and by the grace of God go you and I. Your cup is full, look on the sunny side. I see a piece of heaven here and now when I look into your bright eyes, yeah. Remember someone loves you. Bright eyes. Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo. I love that song. That's great. Well, good morning, everyone. Came across a story some time ago that I really has spoken to me as I've remembered it over and over again. There was a minister, and he was giving his sermon, and then after the service, he was driving home and had his 14-year-old daughter in the back seat, and they were driving, just leaving the church, and just down the block, he noticed some of the young people from the church there, and they were over smoking cigarettes. And he said, "Can you believe that? I just can't. Not even a block from the church, and already smoking." And the young 14-year-old daughter says, "Yeah, can you believe that? Look, not even a block from the church and already judging." I love that story because it's a good reminder for me, and I'm sure for others. And, we've been looking at different ideas and different understandings and different faculties as we take this spiritual journey in our life. And one of our strongest and one of the most significant and one of the most important, I think, spiritual faculties is the faculty of judgment. However, you can realize that all of these faculties in some way can be misused. Our faculty of imagination gets misused all the time, usually when we're judging, if you think about it. Because oftentimes what we're judging is something that doesn't really exist in the first place. It's something that comes up in our imagination about how we think things are, rather than really understanding and seeing the truth of how things are. And part of what judgment is about, the real judgment that is what I call discernment, spiritual discernment, is really being able to look beyond what we are seeing out here in the world, looking beyond the circumstances, looking beyond our images of how things are, so that we can really truly see on a clearer level the essence that is there, the presence that is there, the power that is there, the light that is there, the peace that is there. And so we find ourselves using this power, this faculty of judging in ways that really don't really serve us, and they don't really serve the greater spiritual humanity. Franz Kafka, we oftentimes hear about this idea of, especially in Christianity, of the Judgment Day. How many of you ever got slammed with the idea of the Judgment Day? Well, I'm going to suggest to you that the day of judgment, as it's referred to in Scripture, is really a misunderstanding. Franz Kafka says, "Our only concept of time makes it possible for us to speak of the day of judgment by that name. In reality, it is a summary court in perpetual session." And what I hear in that is that there is a continual awareness that there is judgment that is going on, but the reality is it a use of our faculty of wisdom and discernment, or is it our faculty of condemnation and punishment? And there's the difference, I think. Because in misusing our faculty of judgment, what we're really doing is we are using our creative power to make things wrong, to make things not be how we think they're supposed to be, first of all. Charles Fillmore says that the translators of the authorized version of the American Standard Version of the New Testament are responsible for the great Judgment Day bugaboo. Isn't that a great term, bugaboo? Yeah. He says, in every instance where judgment was mentioned by Jesus, he said, in a day of judgment. But the translators changed it to making the time of judgment appear a definite point in the future, instead of the repeated consummations of causes that occur in the lives of individuals and nations. So there's a big difference between the judgment day and in a day of judgment. And so let's kind of translate that a little bit more. There's a big difference between this day when everyone gets judged to a day when, in a day of discernment or a time of discernment, in a state of discernment. Can you see the difference in that? And so discernment really has to do with realigning ourselves with the truth that is already present. And that's what discernment really is. Discernment is really being able to discern between that which is really of truth and that which is false or an illusion. That's a challenge nowadays, isn't it? Because we hear lots of talk about things that are fake, right? And sometimes it's a really challenge to understand that there are those things that are fake in the world. And most of those things that are fake in the world are not necessarily coming from the world. They're coming from a misunderstanding or a disawareness, you might say, of the presence and the power of the divine in that circumstance or situation. It's our inability to look beyond what is the manifest appearance to be able to see something that is deeper and something richer in that particular circumstance or experience. Alexander Pope says, "It is with our judgments as with our watches. No two are just alike, but each one believes their own." Yeah. When I judge, it's because my judgment is right, right? You know, if I have an opinion of you, my opinion is the truth, right? Well, unfortunately, that's what the ego mind tells us. That we create these ideas and these concepts, not only of others, but of ourselves, and we believe them. And I love one of the things Eckhart Tolle says. It's one of the most profound awarenesses. He says, don't believe everything you think. Because not everything you think is the truth. And thoughts come into our awareness. They come through our awareness. We're all a part of what Charles Fillmore calls a race mind, and there are all kinds of thoughts and ideas and beliefs in the race mind that we allow. In a way, our minds are kind of like porous sieves, and we allow these thoughts to pass through our mind. And every now and then, they have they have a power, or they have an energy attached to them, you might say. And we have an energy attached to them. And so we draw to us these different ideas and thoughts that have a charge on them. But they have a charge on them because we haven't resolved in our hearts and minds in some way to look past the falsehood in them and to be able to see the truth that is beyond them, that's behind them. And so we have these ideas, and so part of our work is not necessarily, what we tend to do is when the thought comes by and it's got this charge, so we hold on to it and we go, oh, wow, that feels right, that's true. But in reality, there may be some illusion in that, and we haven't taken the time to really listen, and we've used our analytical mind to try and determine what is truth. I'm going to suggest to you that the analytical mind has no clue what truth is. Now, those of you who are scientists in the group, I know you're going to go, oh, wait a minute, this guy's crazy. But the analytical mind really only has the power to compare. And that's the purpose of the analytical mind. The purpose of it is to compare. And there's a real value at times in comparing. But the moment that you allow the analytical mind to help you determine what is true, you're missing the point. You're missing the boat, and you're really not really perceiving clearly. Your analytical mind is really only able to say, this is this much and this is that much. Or this is up here and that's down here. And we do that whether we realize it or not, in and with each other, and it's one of our misuses of judgment. We somehow decide that someone else is up here and we're down here, or vice versa. We're up here and someone else is down here. And that's what the ego mind, the analytical mind, actually is for. And it is a misuse of an awareness that there really is no up and down in there's no hierarchy in spirit. There's no hierarchy in our natures. There's no hierarchy in our truth. That we are created in the image and after the likeness of the one God, the one Spirit, the one divine power, the creative source. And yet the moment that we move into this whole idea of comparison, we are actually moving into an energy of separation, right? We're using the ego mind to try and keep us somehow separate from our own awareness of our true nature and being. In John chapter 8, verse 3 through 7, and the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, and in the very act now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what say you? And this they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. And so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said to them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Well, how many of you would be willing and able to do that, to cast the first stone? Maybe you've never been caught in the act of, quote, adultery, but each and every one of us has adulterated our true nature in some way in life, haven't we? And what I mean by that is we have somehow seen ourselves less than the divine creation that we truly are. And the moment that we've done that, we have created this idea, this image that is false. It's not the truth of who we are. In Unity, we talk about it as our personality. We have a personality. Everybody's got a personality. And the personality is this way that we have of showing up in the world. And the personality of each and every one of us has certain characteristics. And those characteristics can be of value. And one of the things that the personality does is it actually can either be a way of hiding or covering up our light, or it can be a way of letting our light shine through. And so part of our spiritual work is to learn to allow our personalities to become more transparent and to allow more of our unique divine nature to show up through our personality. But what we have a tendency to do is use our personality as a way of hiding and comparing ourselves to each other. And then by doing so, we actually are creating this idea, this sense of separation. Jesus also said, For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. And so, in praying and listening and thinking about this idea of judgment, one of the things that came to me in my meditation is that ultimately, every judgment I make is actually revealing something within myself. Every time I judge another person as being somehow less than or in some way not connected or not a part of that divine nature, then I'm actually projecting something out there in the world. Can I prove that to you? We all do this, whether we know it or not. We're in the process of doing it. And so here's what I'm going to invite you to do. I want you to close your eyes a moment if you're open to it. And I want you to imagine that you are up on a stage. And you're on a stage, and out in the audience are all the people that you know, and all the people who you've known through your life, starting even back in grade school, and teachers and students and parents and all the people you worked with, and just imagine this crowd of people. And in your mind's eye, just imagine that you are now about to hold up a sign. And that sign says, I am absolutely wonderful and perfect just the way I am. Now hold it up and just notice what's happening in that crowd. What's happening in that crowd? What are you seeing on the faces? And what are you feeling being up there on that stage with this audience, holding up this sign? And what are you hearing? Are some of them scoffing? Are some of them turning away? Are some of them maybe saying, yeah? Are some of them saying, yeah, right? And just take a nice deep breath now. And whatever you saw or felt and noticed on the faces of those in that audience, all of that came from your subconscious mind. There's no audience there right now, is there? It's not real. It all came from you. Now you may say, well, yeah, there are people that I know that's what they're going to do. That's what they would do. No, you don't. It all comes from your subconscious mind. And so we create these thoughts and these ideas about how people are, and interestingly enough, we draw to us people who will show up for us just in that way. And it's because we have these thoughts and ideas and belief systems in some way about ourselves. And so we are somehow judging ourselves as not really fitting that banner that we held up or that poster we held up. But it's not the people out there that are doing it. It's because we have something in here that's not willing to allow us to align with that truth of our nature. And so we're not judging, as Jesus said. Jesus said, judge not by appearances, but judge with righteous judgment. And the word righteous simply means to be in alignment with principle, be in alignment with the truth. And so in order to be able to see beyond the appearances, especially within ourselves, well, it has to really kind of start within ourselves. And so some questions you can ask yourself to be able to see beyond appearances. You know, when you look at this situation or circumstance, am I looking at this through the eyes of spirit? Am I looking at this situation through the eyes of the divine? Or am I looking at it from a level of my own awareness? Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that caused the problem in the first place. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that's true of not only how we thinking, but just how we see things. You cannot solve a problem on the same level of perception that's creating the problem in the first place. So in order to really resolve or solve a problem, you have to be willing to think with a higher awareness, with a higher mind. You have to be willing to see from a higher vision. And so in a sense, you can kind of take an awareness and imagination that you're seeing yourself raising up above the situation from a higher place and looking down on it and seeing it from a larger perspective and realizing that even though you may see that there are things that are separating you from your good, that ultimately there's a connection there, and there's never a separation. Ultimately, there's never a way that you can be separated from the source, from your good. Course in Miracles is one of my favorite tools, and I've learned a lot from the Course in Miracles. And one of the things I've learned from the Course in Miracles is that whenever I am in judgment of another, ultimately I am in judgment of myself. And ultimately, if I'm in judgment of myself, I'm also in judgments of others. So when we are in that energy of judgment, when we are trying to compare and say this person is right and this person is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, we're in that analytical ego mind, and the ego mind really does not have the capacity to see beyond its own illusions, to see beyond its own creations. And its own creations, as I said earlier, we create a lot of the things that are going on out here in the world, and we then judge them and say that somehow that they're not fitting our mold of how the world is supposed to be. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Is there anything in your life that's not showing up the way you think it should be? Yeah. But that's all coming from our own creative power. It's our coming from our own creative power to create, and we're misusing that ability to create by creating those things that we are choosing to see as somehow in opposition to our good. You know, Wayne Dyer says it this way. He says, judgments prevent us from seeing the good that lies beyond the appearances that we're seeing. So in a real sense, misusing that faculty of analytical mind is actually keeping us from really seeing what is absolutely present and there in the circumstance or situation. So in every circumstance or situation, you can bet that there's either a lesson or there is a challenge. And that really depends upon how you look at it. Life really presents to you different circumstances and situations in order to help you to see what is going on in your own energy, in your own consciousness that needs to be transformed, that needs to be healed, that needs to be raised to another level. I love the work, I've shared a number of times, the work of Matt Kahn. And one of the ways that you can work with that is to recognize that every time something comes into your experience that brings up in you some emotional charge or some discomfort or something that is, whatever comes up within you. As he says, whatever arises, love that. So when you are able to see and notice what comes up within you in whatever circumstance goes on, and notice yourself in that energy of judgment, the recommendation is not that you then judge yourself for judging. That's what we have a tendency to do. And so the idea is then to just simply send love to that part of yourself. And the way he describes it is each of these things that come up are like small children that are actually coming to us for our own attention and to basically receive the love that we have not been giving to that part of ourself. And the love that we're not giving to that part of ourselves is basically, we're not giving that part of ourselves because we've been actually too busy putting it out there on the faces of everybody else. We've been projecting it. And, you know, when you have a judgment of something that you don't really accept within yourself, Carl Jung called it projection, and basically it winds up on the faces of those people around you. And so then you go through life trying to fix all the people around you so that you can feel good, right? Anybody try to fix anybody lately? No, none of us would do that. Well, we do. We think that somehow by making somebody else be in a different way, by making sure that we point out how they are somehow less than or faulty or they're not living up to our image of how they're supposed to be, that somehow that's going to make life better for us. How's that working for you? Doesn't work very well, does it? It always comes back. It always comes back. Louise Hay says that, you know, ultimately the only thing we ever judge about another person is not being the way we want them to be. Ultimately, that's it. We make judgments about people because they're not the way we think they're supposed to be. They're not the way that we want them to be. But in the very act of doing that, we are amplifying those things within ourselves that we are not able to accept. In the very act of judging another, you amplify those things within you that you're not able to accept about yourself. And so our work really, the thing that I've been learning from Matt is to let go of this idea that we have to make other people be the way we think they're supposed to be, and let go of the need to have yourself be right by making others not right. And learning to love that part of yourself that's crying out for the only love that really will resolve or heal or transform that energy. And that's the love you give to yourself. So ultimately, every judgment that you make of another is a judgment you are making of yourself, and every judgment you make of yourself is a judgment that you are projecting out onto the world. And so in order to heal the world, we've got homework. What do you think the homework might be? You think we need to go out and make the world a better place? Absolutely. But we do that by starting right in here. By learning to love those places within us where we notice and pay attention and become aware of our own judgmental nature. We all have a judgmental nature. Personally, I really hate all those judgmental people. Right?
Yeah.
And we're really good at pointing out judgmental people. I especially hate the judgmental people that are judgmental of me, of course. But what I'm learning is that even that very act of defending myself against judgments is in itself a judgmental act. And it doesn't change other people's thoughts and ideas about me. It doesn't change any of that unless I first change whatever it brings up inside of me. And if I'm willing to look at and resolve and heal and send love to that part of myself that maybe feels upset or hurt or disappointed or angry or frustrated or judgmental back, that's often usually how we respond to judgment, is we just judge back. Yeah. And if I will take the time to then stop and acknowledge whatever's going on in me, and then send love to that part of myself that's feeling unloved, that's feeling upset, that's feeling challenged, that's feeling criticized, then something shifts. And in the very act of doing that, I shift my energy in such a way that I don't necessarily have to agree with someone's judgments, but I don't have to get charged by them either. I don't have to get hooked in, as Pema Chodron says. We don't bite the hook. I love that term. Just that word in itself just speaks volumes to me. When someone says something that is really intended to hook us, maybe not consciously, but on a pain body ego consciousness, people say things out of their pain body, and the purpose of it is to get an emotional response and reaction from us because that feeds that pain body. And if I jump into there and respond to it, or react to it, let's put it that way, I jump in and react to it, basically I'm just biting the hook that they've set for me. And so part of the practice, I think, for us is to learn how to notice when we're doing that, and then send love to that part of ourselves that does bite the hook, that does react, and realize that our reaction is not going to change how they are. But if we are willing to love that part of ourselves that is reacting to that, it does change the energy and vibration, and we don't tend to draw to us that same kind of energy in the future. Can't change it necessarily in the moment, but we certainly change the pattern that creates it. So, another question we can ask yourself is, when you find yourself having an experience or a reaction to something in life, and a way to be able to see beyond the appearance is to begin to recognize that all the things that are going on out here in the world are in some way first going on inside of here. They're first going inside of our consciousness. And we wouldn't even notice them or be aware of them if they weren't in some way first going on inside of our consciousness. They wouldn't show up. We wouldn't even notice them. That's true of the wonderful, beautiful things in life, but it's also true of the challenging, judgmental, negative things in life. And we've got to be honest with ourselves and be open to recognizing that whatever we're seeing out here in the world is first showing up as something that's going on inside of us. And it's going on inside of us, maybe not necessarily because of what's happening in that particular moment. And so a big question to ask yourself is, when you find yourself in a troubled situation, a situation where you're having challenges or difficulties, ask yourself the question, when and where have I experienced this before? Take a deep breath. When and where have I experienced this before? And in the very act of asking that question and being open and listening to what that is, you can begin to recognize that what's going on now in this circumstance or situation is not necessarily the cause of what's going on inside of you. What's going on out here in the circumstance and situation is not the cause. It's triggering something that's going on inside of you. And it's bringing me back into your awareness and into your consciousness for the purpose of it to be transformed and healed. So what in this, when and where have I experienced something like this before? And you have a tendency to think, well, this, it's because of them, and if I didn't have to deal with them, I would never have this experience again. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You can fill in the blank on all your thems. How many of you got thems? There's a them out there, right? It's all this kind of person or that kind of person, or these are our prejudgments. You guys know what I'm talking about? Ever heard of prejudice? We do have them. We have prejudices. It's because of this kind of being or that kind of person or that kind of... These are all prejudices. We have prejudged how people are. And those prejudgments are actually inside of us, and they are one of the things that are creating and drawing to us experiences so that we can heal our prejudgments, so that we can see beyond the appearance of those prejudgments, so that we can see beyond the appearance of how we have chosen to look through the lens of our way of seeing. So ask yourself the question, when and where have I seen and experienced this before? And then Eric Butterworth says one of the most powerful things you can ask yourself when you find yourself in a difficult or challenging circumstance or situation, to help see beyond the appearance, I find it valuable to ask the question, what's in this from me? What's in this from me? Because there's something in me that is actually helping to generate or to cause or to create some circumstance in my life. And if I'm open and honest and willing to look at that and willing to allow whatever that is to come up into my awareness, then I can use that technique of Matt Kahn and just love that part of me that's generating this difficulty. Learn to love that part of yourself, and you no longer create those kinds of circumstances. You don't create those kinds of judgments. You don't create those kinds of challenges, those conflicts. And so you're able to transform the world by first transforming what's going on within you about what's going on in the world. Now, we have a tendency to make it the other way around. We have a tendency to want to fix the world so that we can feel okay inside. Right? And I'm going to suggest to you, we need to reverse that. And so your work this week is really to be open to looking beyond appearances. To looking beyond the circumstances, to looking beyond the images that we placed on others, to looking beyond the view that we have of the world, our political system, the things that are going on in politics, or the things that are going on in particular candidates, or the things that are going on. If you can begin to shift your energy about those circumstances and situations, you'll find that another energy begins to be created. And you become a part of creating the possibility of heaven on earth. You up for that? Anybody interested in playing that game? All right, so let's move into our meditation time. Let's just take a moment now and breathe into the heart space. And as you move gently in and out with the breath, Allow that breath to take you deeper into the heart space. And let your heart expand as you breathe in. And let it contract as you breathe out. And let it continue to expand even more as you breathe in and out. And let your heart be open to the energies of acceptance. Accepting is a high vibration. It's an energy that allows us to become more aware of the truth of what is. And so in your heart and mind, just affirm and say to yourself and of yourself, I am accepting. I am accepting. And just bring into your awareness yourself. And just notice those places within you where you've had difficulty accepting. Those places within you that you have labeled in some way as less than or in any way not good enough. And see if you can just in your heart bring that part of you that feels that into your awareness. And just say to that part of you, no, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And you may notice some part of you that wants to resist doing that or saying that. And just let that be okay. Let's move back to that energy of acceptance. And just see if you can say to that part of you that wants to resist, I love you. I love you. I love you. And again, just notice if there's some part of you that is crying out for your attention by judging some part of you as somehow less than. Maybe you are judging that part of you that judges. And just love that part of you also. Just say, I love you. I love you. I love you. And just bring into your awareness someone in your life that you have had difficulty with, conflict with, or feel that is not that you don't, well, let's just speak plainly. Somebody you really just don't like very much. And just notice what that brings up within you. Notice if it brings up within you discomfort, constriction, and just feel that constriction within your heart. And just notice it. And just gently say to yourself, and to that part of you that has trouble accepting or liking even someone else, I love you. I love you. I love you. bring into your awareness any part of you or any part of someone else that you feel you really value and appreciate. Some part of you that you actually feel pretty good about. Or something you admire in another person. And just recognize and know that you wouldn't see that in the other person if there wasn't something about that within you. And just say that part of yourself, I love you. I love you. I love you. And take now a nice deep breath. Let your awareness be here in this room, this time and place. Take another nice deep breath. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Be here and now in the willingness to accept, to allow, and to allow the energy of love to transform all of our judgments. And so it is. We at Unity in the Heart of Austin are committed to inspiring people to awaken to their unique divine nature through spiritual teachings, through heart-to-heart connections, through prayer, and through sacred service. And we provide tools, spiritual tools, that allow you to live your best possible life. I'm Reverend Tony Roebuck, minister at Unity in the Heart of Austin, and I truly hope that you are inspired by and that you are transformed by, you enjoy this week's spiritual message. And if you would like to leave a donation, a tithe, to help the work of this ministry in supporting you and others like you, then we are truly grateful for your generosity and for helping to make the world a better place. Because we know that life is meant to be good.